Hi guys, welcome to this other video. So today we are going to talk about NAT and its related components. So in this video, what we are going to see is, as I said, NAT. We also see what is SNAT. We'll see path, that's NAT overload. We'll see like differences between SNAT and the path. Then next we'll jump into the DNAT, destination NAT. Then we'll also see what is VIPs. We'll see a difference or differences between the DNAT and the VIP. Then for all of these, this NAT, uh, this NAT types, we are going to show some use cases. And then at the end, we'll do some practical example concerning the VIPs. So let's jump directly into the SNAT. So like SNAT, before we jump into SNAT, what is NAT? NAT is like NAT is network address translation. So it allows for multiple devices on a private network to share a single IP address for internet access. So that is the most common definition of NAT. Yeah. So this is achieved by mapping private IP addresses to a public one when transmitting data outside the internet. So as we can see from this diagram, you can see from this diagram, you have devices here from our local network. These devices need to have access to the internet going through our FortiGate appliance. So all the requests that are going to be sent through these IP addresses will pass through the default gateway of this firewall for this local network, which is 174.122.1.1. And from here, there is the NAT translation between this IP address, this private IP address, and this public IP address to let all requests from these devices to go through this private IP address, then forward to this public address to go to the internet. So on the NAT, on the SNAT, there is this one-to-one translation that is done. That means that the one-to-one translation is between the private IP address of the local network or the default gateway of the local network, because when the requests are sent from these different devices, all the requests are known as coming from the default gateway. So for the SNAT, there is this one-to-one translation that is established between this private IP address and this public IP address. So now let's jump to the 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 the, the path. So path is port address translation. So here we will have what we call many to one with ports. So why we say many to one with port is that with the SNAT typically maps a private IP address to a single public IP address, while in the path allows for multiple devices with private IP addresses to share a single public IP address by translating both IP address and port number. It means that in our local network, each device with its IP address will also assign a port number. So meaning that in the firewall, this firewall, for example, will have a default gateway here for this local subnet and this public IP address here to reach to the internet. So in the NAT translation table, what we're going to have here is we'll have an inside local IP. Here we'll have a correspondence between each local IP address and its port number with the inside global IP address with its port number. It means in the in the path, multiple devices with port number will be translated to a single IP address. Here in the path, we have many to one with ports. It means here we are not like in the previous, like in SNAT here, where we had only a translation between one private IP and one public IP. Here we have multiple private IP addresses translated into one public IP, and this is done and differentiated with the port number. So that's the main difference between the SNAT and the PAT. So the other one will be the DNAT. So after talking about source NAT and its components, we'll see now the DNAT, destination NAT. So in this case, destination NAT, it means that our local subnet is now the destination. So here from this diagram, we can see that we would like from a desktop that is on the internet, would like to have access to the internal network. Maybe this user want to access maybe a web server in the company, or maybe it can be like a mail server, or maybe some share or some public also internal storage or archive server in the company. So this user wants to access these resources. So what this user knows is the public IP address of the firewall. So the destination NAT will be configured on the FortiGate firewall so that each request that comes from the internet with this public IP address, it will be translated on the firewall, then redirected to the corresponding destination in our local network. So this is how destination NAT works. So one of the other mode of DNAT that we actually can do on the FortiGate is what FortiGate calls VIPs. So VIPs here is another functionality that is included in our FortiGate appliances or FortiGate devices, where you can decide, for example, that each request that comes from the internet, so someone from the internet who knows the public IP address of our FortiGate firewall, when this user typed our IP address on his web browser, if this user adds a port number to the IP address, then on the firewall we will need to configure virtual IP addresses and configure this in the firewall policy so that each request that is sent from the internet with our public IP address and a port number, we should redirect the request on the FortiGate and redirect it directly to the corresponding service. So like from here on this image, you see that port, we can have a server on which we have many services that are running with many services that are running and which are accessible through various port numbers. This can be running on the same server, or they can be running on multiple servers. So the aim here is to configure VIP so that each time that a request comes from internet with the public IP address of a FortiGate and a corresponding port number, we should translate the request and redirect the request to the internal server or to the internal service. So in the next video, guys, we will see how to configure the VIPs on this FortiGate appliance here. So as we said, the aim of this channel is to do practical stuff. So it is good to know what is NAT, what is SNAT, what is DNAT, what are VIPs, but it is much better to know how to configure this in the real world devices. So here in the next video, what we are going to do is to configure VIPs on this FortiGate firewall so that a user from the internet, from the external network, can access a mail server or a web server in our internal local network. So guys, Let's meet in the next video to see how to put in place this VIP.